What's going on, you guys? You're tuned into the Cutting Room Knife Review. I'm your host, Garrett, and today we have another episode of Budget Bangers. But before we get into this episode, I want to ask you guys a question. Out of all the budget bangers that we've gone over so far in this video series, which is your favorite? And if you could only carry one of these knives, which knife would you choose? And why would you choose it? Is it the steel? Is it the materials that make up the knife? Is it the look of the knife or the feel of the knife? Is it the value of the knife? I mean, I think a lot of people might choose the raccoon. It's a really good choice. I think a lot of people might choose the porcupine. It's a really good choice. You know, when I started out this video series, I really thought I had it figured out. I thought, I know which knives I'm going to like, and I know just about what I'm going to pick, and I can kind of just tell you the rundown of all of them right away. And I'm going to do the video series to go through them all, but I have these knives pegged. Well, to tell you the truth, you guys, I don't think I did. And after carrying these knives and playing around with them and having them for a couple months now, I think that my opinions have kind of changed on them. And at the end of the day, I'm really starting to think that the Kizer Drop Bear 2 might just be the budget banger. This might be the best value knife out of this whole group, and I'm going to tell you why. What's up, guys? I'm Garrett. You're tuned in to the Cutting Room Knife Review, where I review knives, blades, and all things sharp. Please like and subscribe so I can keep bringing you more killer knife content. So the Kizer Drop Bear 2. The dark horse of the budget bangers. I did not expect this knife to be my choice for my favorite out of all these budget bangers. And right now, it really is. I just can't really get enough of this little knife. And there's so many different aspects that really make me like this knife and make me enjoy it and make me just think the value of this knife is kind of unbeatable right now. It is just a kick-ass little knife that has everything you need, nothing you don't, and everything fits just about right for me. I can't really put any negative criticism on this knife. Not for the price it's at, and not for its competition, because for everything this knife does right, it doesn't really do too much wrong. And now, guys, remember, this is just my opinion. I don't do this for a living, and, I'm not paid by anybody, and none of these knives were given to me. I bought all these knives with my own money, and I bought all these knives because I wanted to review them for you. I'm not a budget knife guy. I don't really buy budget knives a whole lot. I have them here and there, and I use them as beaters, but I definitely I didn't have a collection of budget knives before I started this review channel. And that might make me sound like cocky. It might make me sound pretentious, but I say that to put things in a perspective that I've actually grown a huge respect for these knives. And I've come to this understanding that you don't have to spend $300, $400, $500, $800, $900 on a knife to get an awesome knife. Now, there's a lot of fun knives and a lot of collectible knives and some badass stuff that's for those prices, but you don't need it to cut stuff up well. You don't need it to have a comfortable knife that works great and has a good everyday carry. And you don't even need it to have one that looks badass. So I'm growing such respect for what these knives offer these days at this sub $100 price, and really what you're getting out of these knives and how good they feel compared to knives from, 3, 5, 10 years ago that were in this price point. It's amazing what these companies are coming out with. And for the longest time, I really thought Vosteed was going to be the brand that just, took everything by storm. And to tell you the truth, when it comes down to just the amount of models that Vosteed has that are really just kick-ass, everyday carry, inexpensive, great models, I think they have the biggest variety of like really top of the line, great stuff for like next to no money. Um, I think that Vosteed really has killed it with just being solid model to model to model and doing some really cool stuff with knives like the Vanker lock. That's really cool. Um, I think that brands like Civivi have been doing it for a long time, and I think they offer some really classic choices. And they of course they have the Vision FG, which is like almost unbeatable in this category. But like I don't even like bringing it up because it's just okay. It's like okay, the Vision FG wins, and like let's talk about something else because we can't just have 10 episodes on the Vision FG because we're just going to put that knife aside for now. And like the rest of Civivi's lineup is good, but I find some of it to be pretty eclectic and like not really that like comfortable and usable for me. And the stuff that they have is that's like what I consider pretty good and like pretty good looking is just a little bit behind the times. Like if you remember my review for the Elementum 2, this knife's great, but it's just like doesn't offer a lot compared to some of the knives that are its counterparts, and it's priced out with for its technology. I mean, it's a button lock and it has a flipper, and that's like what you're getting for this. And a PVD coated hollow grind is great, but when you stack it up next to the Kizer, it this thing doesn't hold water anymore. Not for being $20 more expensive and not having the same attributes that this knife does. So the Kizer is just a special knife. It has a really good feel to it. When I first looked at this knife, I was like, okay, you got this spear point. It's cool. It's got a hollow grind on it. It's aluminum. It's a great price for it. It's got this, button activated compression lock. They call it a button activated liner lock, but that's basically what a compression lock is. And where this, fits into the tang of the knife, it's basically, it's not the same as Vosteed's top liner lock, but it basically is. There's some slight differences, but they're basically doing the same thing. And I can't honestly say that like one is going to be superior to the other. People might say different in the comments, and I'm open to hearing anybody's thoughts on this, but I try to do my research on it as best I could. And while they're called different things, and I think they have slightly different like geometry in the mechanics of it, I think essentially they're basically the same thing. This is a button activated compression lock, and they're basically using Spyderco's technology or Spyderco's patent that's up now, and using it's basically the same thing as what Spyderco is using, and they just use a button to activate the compression lock. But this knife is just so comfortable in my hands, and the action on it is just so good. And there's a lot of features of this knife I just didn't realize what they were. I didn't realize this knife had it. When I went to go really carry this knife, I really fell in love with it. I just fell in love with carrying this thing. It's really comfortable. It's just an easy to carry little knife. It does work. And there's some features to it that I just didn't understand what the features were, like the fact that this blade is DLC coated. This isn't PVD. This is actually DLC. So you're getting a DLC coated blade for $65? Get out of here. That's incredible. I thought that the smooth aluminum was like, a step down from like this aluminum, which you have the Martin from Vosteed, and like, yeah, this is cool. There's a little bit more grip. They've done a little bit more to it with the milling, but this is $100 knife. This is $35 more than this knife is. And really, these knives are pretty close to the same size, but how they fit in my hand, this knife feels a lot smaller than this knife does. And I can't tell you why, but it does. Maybe it's just this little bit of difference in like how my hand sits, but I have to be choked up on this knife, and I don't want to be choked up on this knife. I want to hold it back here. I want to hold it like right here. I want to hold it a little bit off the blade edge, and I really have to be just choked up on this Martin. And for some reason on this knife, I don't have to be choked up. I can actually hold it with all my fingers without being choked up. Or I can choose to choke up, and this knife doesn't seem to like bother me as much as far as the shape of the blade geometry goes. I don't mind my fingers being closer to the blade edge, and that's just me. But the milling on the aluminum doesn't really bother me in this case. There's just a lot of things that I didn't think this knife had, or I didn't give this knife enough credit for, because the more I carry it, the more I really like it. So let's go into the specifications and just really break down the materials and the size of this knife. All right, guys, so the Kizer Drop Bear 2 is a pretty compact knife. It's 6.9 inches overall, okay? So being under 7 inches, that in my book makes it a compact knife. It's okay. It's still very good for everyday carry. I think it's still totally capable of doing really good hard work. And a lot of that's because the blade length itself is 2.92 inches. And so when we have like that close to a 3-inch blade, we're really not running into any issues where you're going to be cutting stuff that, you know, your everyday carry knife should be able to handle. If you can't handle it with around a 3-inch blade, like, what are you running into with, you know, your everyday carry? This knife is actually really capable of doing a lot of hard work. The handle length is going to be 3.98 inches. So essentially it's 4 inches in the handle length. And I'm able to get purchase on it with my pinky, and I'm able to get purchase on it comfortably with my index finger. And that's what really matters to me, is that my hand is completely wrapped around this knife. I'm not off it like this, where my pinky purchase is getting like down in here like it does on my CRK small and cozy. And I'm not forced to like grip it up here like I am on the Vosteed Martin. For me, the rest of my hand to be comfortable on this, I have to use this choil. When I'm like this on the knife, you know, my pinky finger doesn't have any purchase on this anymore, and I have this 3-finger grip, and that's just like, it feels like I'm playing with a baby knife. So the thickness on this blade is 0.1 inches, and that's really thin, especially with a hollow grind, and it's going to wind up make this blade really slicey. Now, the fact that it's Nitro V, it's a bit tougher of a budget steel. It's DLC coated, which is going to help with the toughness as far as the exterior of the steel, and just the longevity of the knife. I guess it's not really going to help with the toughness of the actual steel itself, but Nitro V is pretty tough, and we have this thicker spine and flat below the spine before it goes into the hollow grind, so that really you're getting a lot of the thickness to stay thick throughout here, which is going to help with the rigidity of the blade, while this hollow grind through here is going to help keep a lot of the blade very thin past the cutting edge. It's kind of a give and take on this knife for keeping the blade so thin. Now, this is also a 3-ounce knife. It's 3.01 ounces. And so a 3-ounce knife is a very lightweight knife. We're getting into, Golden Design Works Slim territory. We're getting into Spyderco lightweight para 3 territory. It's just it's nice for this knife. It feels right. This knife kind of just disappears in your pocket. With this deep carry pocket clip, it is, not going to be very noticed in your pocket, which is what you want for a lot of people want that in a knife, where it just kind of, you don't notice that you have it on you. But it's going to be tough enough to use for everyday carry purposes, and
The lightness of this knife just makes it a breeze to carry this thing. It's really cool. And the fact that the aluminum is going to be strong, aluminum's a really nice handle material because the strength of it and the toughness of it is pretty high for the weight that it takes. This does have a recessed liner in it. So it has an inset liner, which has some weight reduction on the inside of it. It's not just a solid liner. Of course, it does have the liner for it to have a top liner lock or a button activated compression lock. It has to have a liner to make that lock work. The liner is going to be stainless steel, along with the hardware being stainless steel and the clip being stainless steel. Now, I like the way that this knife looks. The aesthetics are really nice. You have the black hardware, the black pivot, black clip against this kind of goldish, maybe bronze. I think it's closer to gold color for the handles. The only thing that I really don't like, and this knife actually pulls it off really well, is the fact that they left these two holes open, which is great because you can swap sides. It's ambidextrous as far as the pocket clip goes. I just like it when knives do things like what Voss did with the porcupine, and they put a little tab in there with some screws. That way you can kind of fill up the ambidextrous hole. The side that you're not using, it turns into, it's flat. You don't just have some weird empty hole in your knife. This knife, it doesn't really bother me. I don't think it looks bad. And with the aluminum, they're able to make it look pretty clean. But, it would be one thing that I would add to a knife. Now, once again, at a $65 knife, you're asking a lot. They can only put so much into a knife at that price point and keep it that price point. So, yeah, it is what it is. If this is what the most I'm complaining about this knife, that's not a very big gripe. And of course, like I said earlier, we have a DLC coating to this blade, which is just really incredible that this knife was able to, or that Kizer was able to use a DLC coating on this knife. This blade, instead of a PVD coating or maybe any other different ways to coat the blades, be it I'm blanking on the term. But there's different ways you can coat the blades. And DLC, the Diamond Light Carbon, is going to be the best way that you can coat a blade. It's going to be the most durable coating that you can put on it. It's also the most expensive coating you can put on it. So it's really quite remarkable that the Kizer uses this, whereas I don't believe that Boston uses DLC on the lesser expensive knives of theirs. So usually you're going to see DLC coating on knives that are, well into the hundreds, if not $200 range, much higher in knives. So let's compare the Kizer to some other knives just to get a size comparison to it. And what we're going to have here is, of course, the Spyderco Paramilitary, or Para 3, and the Spyderco Para 3 is actually bigger than this knife. We have Spyderco Paramilitary 2. I almost said Paramilitary 3 back there. I think I almost stumbled and did say that. There is no such thing as a Paramilitary 3. It's actually just called a Para 3. The Paramilitary 2 is much bigger than this knife. We are definitely working with a compact knife. Anything smaller than the Para 3 is definitely compact in my opinion. Now, we can compare it to some other Spydercos where we have like the Sage 6, and it is going to be slightly smaller than the Sage 6, not by a ton, but it is smaller. And we actually have the closest model to it is going to be the Native 5. So if you're a fan of the Native 5, the Drop Bear 2 is actually fairly close in size to this knife. It's looking like the blade edges are fairly similar in lengths. The blades are fairly similar in lengths. The bodies are fairly similar in lengths. Do I think these are similar knives? Not incredibly. This is going to be a much more heavy-duty, hard-use knife than the Kizer is going to be. But as far as size goes, the Native 5 is very close. Now, comparing other budget knives to it, we can compare of course, the Vosteed Martin, which is very close in size to it. They're almost identical. And just how the knives are built, the Vosteed Martin feels a lot smaller to me, which is crazy to me because I really love the way the Vosteed Martin looks. I think the aesthetics on this knife are great, but the ergonomics on this knife just blow it away. So when it comes down to it, aesthetics do matter because we have knives like the shilling cutter that have great ergonomics and great blade geometry, and I just think they look funky as hell, and I don't want to use them because I don't like looking at the knife. I just don't like it. I don't like the way it looks. It works great. This is a killer knife. This is a great user. There's a lot of great things to be said about this knife. I just don't like how it looks. I just don't want it in my pocket. There's a point where I have to like the way I think the knife looks cool. And I think this knife looks super cool, but I don't think it looks so cool that I wouldn't use this with the superior ergonomics of this knife. Now, we have some other options. We have the Civivi Elementum 2, which is actually a very close knife in size to the Kizer. And I think they have similar feels across the knives where they feel pretty similar in the hands, similar handle sizes, similar blade sizes. The Raccoon, of course, is going to be a larger knife, as well as the Porcupine is going to be a bit larger of a knife. Not so much the Porcupine, but more the Raccoon is the large size knife. Now, one last knife that, excuse me as I drop a knife. One last knife that does deserve some recognition is the Kizer Bulldog 2, which is actually smaller than the Drop Bear 2. So the Mini Bulldog, did I say Bulldog 2? The Mini Bulldog is actually pretty comfortable for my one-handed carry. And this is about as small as it gets for my one-hand carry. And it is bigger than the Mini Bulldog. So this isn't the smallest knife that I'm willing to carry, although it is getting down there. All in all, this knife is just put together really well. It has a very usable blade shape. Kizer, I called this a spear point earlier. Kizer calls it a drop point. I guess you could catch me in the comments and whether there has to be an edge on this side for it to be a spear point. It doesn't look like a traditional drop point to me, but spear point, drop point, whatever you want to call this blade, Kizer calls it a drop point. It is a very effective blade shape. It is good for everyday use. This knife is very light. This knife is just put together well. And you actually have different options in this knife too. This knife does come with a different lock. You can get it in a crossbar style lock like you'd find on this knife. I prefer the button compression lock to the crossbar lock, but Kizer's crossbar lock is very strong. It is definitely tested and received well by the community. And there's 3 different blade shapes that you can get for this. You can get a sheep's foot blade shape, and you can also get a clip point blade shape. I liked this blade shape the best. I just like the traditional drop point, I guess we'll call it. I called it a spear point earlier, but we'll just go with what Kizer calls it. And the drop point blade shape is really good. We have a good amount of jimping on the top, and it does give you this little jimping right here on the edge of the knife. So if you do want to do a pinch grip, you can really dig your index finger in and guide the knife for really detailed work. All in all, I think this knife really is well-rounded. The action on this knife is really good. It runs on bearings. It's really smooth. It has a hydraulic feel to it. The hydraulic feel to this bearing makes it so the bearings are very smooth, but they don't just drop the knife shut. It doesn't just go tink. It kind of just drops and it closes. It doesn't bounce at the bottom. Whereas we have this Vosteed Martin, which has maybe smoother feeling bearings, perhaps. You see that bounce at the bottom? I don't like that. I don't like when it doesn't just like come down and stop at the bottom. Now I can control it enough to make it do that, but this knife tends to has a detent that is a bit stronger in my opinion than the Vosteeds, and it kind of stops it towards the bottom. Has a little bit more of a positive pressure that has to be put against the blade for it to move, and a little bit more, I just like the way it stops at the bottom. It has a cleaner feel to me than the Vosteed does. And I didn't notice it at first, but it's really grown on me. All in all, I think this knife really swings above its weight class. I think that it is a great choice, an absolutely great choice for your money. If you're going to be spending in the $50 to $70 range, you're not going to beat this knife. You can go get a Vision FG, and it beats pretty much everything on the table, and there's nothing that beats that knife, but this is the closest one that I have to anything that I think would beat it. And there is definitely something to be said for this blade shape being more utilitarian than the Vision FG. I think the Vision FG has that, like, you know, coolness factor with the super lock and the reverse Tonto blade shape, and its fidgetability factor is way up there. But this knife is still fun to fidget with. It's definitely something you can flick, both reverse flick and thumb flick with the thumb studs. You have an ability to hold the knife back or take a closer purchase on it and choke up into that choil. We have a really nice edge on this Nitro V blade. I think Nitro V is a good choice for these budget knives. It's nice and tough while it is easy to sharpen at the same time. And with the DLC coating, it's going to be an extra tough, extra hard to corrode blade. You just get a lot with this knife that you don't get with the other knives in this price range. Some of the other knives do one good thing really good. I really like the blade geometry of the Porcupine. It's almost like a rosy, which is just absolutely crazy to me. But I'm really not a big fan of the liner being exposed under the micarta. I'm really not a huge fan of how this knife fits in my hand unless I choke up on it. And I'm really not a huge fan of the action of this knife. I don't think it's as smooth as it really, see, I missed that. I misfired on that. And like, it's not as smooth as it could be. They could work some kinks out of this knife and turn this knife into an absolute stunner. In fact, if they did what they did with the Raccoon and made a titanium upgraded version of this Porcupine, I think it'd be an absolute winner. But that's not even what we're talking about right now. We're talking about the Kizer Drop Bear 2. I think that Kizer could take this knife and turn this into titanium and turn this into S35 VN, or even a nicer steel like, I'm not sure what Kizer would use, 20 CV maybe, and or I guess M390 since Crucible's gone. And they could have a very good sub $200 absolute knocked out of the park, just winner of a higher end knife. At the end of the day, this checks all the boxes. It isn't the aesthetics on this are good. They're not like the fanciest. They're not like the most flashy, but they're really good. The feel of this knife in my hand, the ergonomics on it are just amazing. And the action on this knife just works great every time. This knife is reliable. Everything they did that put this knife together just worked out. All the pieces of the puzzle fit. That's what Kizer did right. They didn't cut any corners. They didn't leave any pieces of the puzzle out. It isn't a 90% knife. This is a 100% knife. There's nothing really wrong with this knife, and they did everything pretty much right. So I'm going to leave you guys at that. For $65, this is probably the best knife you can get. And this is the knife that I would recommend to a new knife buyer right now. If they're trying to get a $700 knife and be really happy with it, I would probably recommend the Kizer Drop Bear 2. I think it's well-rounded. I don't think it missed. I think it checks all the boxes. And I think that it's, punching above its weight with a lot of the features it has, from the aluminum scales to the DLC hollow ground blade. So, once again, Kizer Drop Bear 2. I'm Garrett from the Cutting Room Knife Review. Until next time, you guys, stay sharp.